Good morning, Year 4. Welcome to today's English lesson. It's the 25th of February, it's a Thursday, and today we are going to be learning about fronted adverbials. Now, I know when we start to use English terminology, it kind of gives people the creeps a bit because they think it's a lot more scary than what it actually is. Sometimes these big words are not actually as complicated as we think they're going to be. So let's make fronted adverbials really straightforward today for absolutely everybody. So, first of all, adverbials, what are they? An adverbial is a word, a phrase or a clause that is used like an adverb to add more information. Basically, what you are doing with an adverbial or an adverbial phrase or a fronted adverbial, you are adding more detail to the verb. That's how I tend to think of them. So when I think about adverb, I think it adds to the verb. It gives you more than what you originally started out as in terms of information. So let's strip it down to its most basic to begin with. It's adding information to the verb. No more complex than that. So let's take a bit of a closer look at a few examples and then we'll go through in a bit more detail in a second. So, at the top, in the sentences here in the white box at the top of the page, the verbs are the words which are in pink and the adverbials are in blue. So we could take those adverbials away and those sentences would still make sense. So if we look at the top one, for example, we met by the train station, you could take away those words in blue, by the train station, and we met would still work as a sentence. It works as a sentence because it has a verb, okay? And because it has that verb in there, it means it can stand alone as it is. So if we have a look at a second one, he stood and waited under the clock. We could take away under the clock and he stood and waited is a great sentence. As soon as we put in that under the clock, we've added in more interest for the reader. We've given the reader more specific information, which is our job as a writer. That's our job to do, to provide as much interest and intrigue and references for our reader that we can. So you'll notice at these top ones, they have all been added on after the main clause. They've all been added on as adverbials to extend the sentence further. If we move now to the bottom of the screen, I actually think this is easier. Because fronted adverbials, the clue is in the name. They go at the front of the sentence, Year 4. And that's absolutely brilliant because the word front tells you they are going to go at the start every single time. So if you are choosing to use a fronted adverbial, you do not need to worry about where within your sentence it's going to go. It's going to go at the front. It's going to go at the beginning of your sentence, and we generally put a comma straight after that fronted adverbial. So that's another way to also remember it as well. If you stick with that rule every time, you'll generally be right. Now, we know the English language is immensely complex and it has lots of rules that we sometimes don't even really know about and certainly don't always understand. There are examples of adverbials and fronted adverbials not having commas, but for the purposes of what we're looking at, I want you to remember that comma goes after that fronted adverbial. So if we have a look at these sentences down in the white on the bottom box, we have moved that information to the start of the sentence. And it changes its layout, okay? Just gives it a bit more intrigue, makes it look a bit different to the ones at the top. So, for example, we've got all night long, she danced. We could take away all night long. She danced would still work as a sentence on its own because it has that verb in it. Putting all night long in at the beginning as a fronted adverbial with a comma after it just makes it more extended. It extends it further. It gives it more detail. It makes the reader know more. Okay? And our job as a writer, make sure the reader is clear about what they're reading. And again, if we have a look at the bottom one there as well, by the train station, we met. So that's done in reverse to the one which is at the top of the screen. And we have put by the train station at the start of the sentence. It's been used as a fronted adverbial. So, it sounds complicated, fronted adverbials, adverbial phrases, not complicated at all, okay? It's thinking about your position, about where you want to use something. Okay, why do we use them? Okay, I've got here 5 particular times that you might use a fronted adverbial. What's really good about them is that they add more detail to your writing. It helps you to be really, and this word is particularly important, helps you to be precise with details and information within your writing, within your sentences. So you have 5 different times here that you might use a fronted adverbial. So you might use a fronted adverbial for the time that something happens. So the example here is before sunrise. Notice that comma, year 4. Okay. You might use a fronted adverbial to show the frequency, how often something happens. So the example is every so often. Again, that comma. The third example, it might help you to show the place where something happens. I really like this sentence as a whole, and I really like it because of the fronted adverbial at the beginning. So at the back of the cave, it's giving you a really clear location about where something is and where it is taking place. The fourth example where you might use a fronted adverbial is telling you how something's happening. So the example here is as quick as a flash. Again, comma. Okay, but that's a really nice one to use. It gives you a speed element, doesn't it, everybody? And your last one is the possibility. How likely or unlikely something might happen. So, almost certainly. If we move on, let's have a look at some more examples. So, on Tuesday, Class 12 are visiting the Imperial War Museum. On Tuesday is a fronted adverbial here, so a comma has been placed after it. We could remove on Tuesday and it would just have Class 12 are visiting the Imperial War Museum, just as a main clause on its own. But we're letting the reader know what time something is happening. So we've put on Tuesday to the beginning of that sentence as a fronted adverbial, and now our reader knows when that event is taking place. You can also use a fronted adverbial to show where, a location, to show where something is taking place. So, out in the field, the horse and her new foal galloped. A comma's been placed after the word field because we could remove that first part. If we removed it, we would just have the horse and her new foal galloped. That's a great sentence on its own, but by adding in that fronted adverbial of place, we've made that sentence much more precise. Out in the field, the horse and her new foal galloped. Another example, frequency, how often. Now, frequency makes it sound more complicated than it needs to be. It's really not at all. So, what we've got in this sentence here, every day the birds came to scavenge food from off the playground. I've taken this as a real example of what happens on our playground each day. The birds know it like clockwork every single day. So, a comma has been placed after the word day. Every day is therefore, within this situation, being used as a fronted adverbial. It's telling us how often something is happening. And you've got here a box on the right that gives you a few other word examples as well. We could take away those 2 words at the beginning and just have the birds came to scavenge food from off the playground. And again, that would work as a sentence. It makes sense like that. But the fronted adverbial just gives it a bit more potency. It's a bit more precise. So let's have a look at what we are going to do today. I'm going to move me again out of the way. So, this is your first activity that I would like you to do today. We are focusing upon where. We're focused upon location for this particular one. So use a pencil and a ruler to connect the fronted adverbial on the left, okay, with the correct sentence that you think it matches on the right. So that is a matching activity to begin with, okay. It's to show where something is taking place. It's neat, so if you have a ruler, please use it, okay. Make your decisions before you do them, okay, before you join them together so that you don't make any mistakes with it. The second part, down at the bottom, I want you to choose a fronted adverbial that could go there. Now, you can only choose a fronted adverbial that is going to show where it is taking place. It must be something which demonstrates position, year 4, location. So think about what could go at the start of each of those sentences. And on the second one, you have a lot of blank lines. The reason I have done that is because I would like you to come up with 5 of your own sentences that begin with a fronted adverbial that is a fronted adverbial of place, not of anywhere else, just telling me where it is happening. So you might want to make a note of some places to begin with where something could happen. in a forest, on the playground, in the ocean. Okay, just examples of where something could take place. So think about your front adverbials. Think about what your sentence is going to be that comes after it that is going to make sense. Now, really importantly, don't forget that comma after your fronted adverbial. Okay, when you've written your sentence out, read it back again, check that you have got that capital letter at the start, that full stop, question mark, exclamation mark at the end, whichever it is you're using, but make sure, really importantly, you have got that fronted adverbial followed by a comma. Now, you will know that I am a big fan of using colour within writing as well as in maths. So if you want to do your commas in a colour to help you to remember to put them, absolutely be my guest and do that. Okay, make it work for you. Now, I need you to make sure these sentences are amazing, that they are detailed, that they are all different, and I need you to make sure that they are neat for me as well. Fully cursive handwriting to the very best of your ability. Now you'll see here that I have put a sentence as an example of the kind of thing that you can do. So I put at the park, comma, Archie played on the swings. So I could take away at the park and Archie played on the swings would still work as a sentence on its own. So that's what you need to remember. You should be able to remove your fronted adverbial year 4 and the rest of the information would work as a main clause, okay? As would work as an independent clause completely. So read it, check it, make sure your work is absolutely precise. When that's done, make sure your grown-ups take a really clear photo of it and email it over to me. See if you make yourself onto Fab 5 for tomorrow. I'm looking forward to seeing what you can do with this.